Hey, so I'm kind of just doing this off the cuff, listening to a YouTube video, but I guess I just want to make a video about how I made these three little papers here, and I'm not the best writer or anything, but in creation order I made this, then this, then this, but in order of change, of course, I made what I changed most in the past. Furthest back in time, I changed this, and then this, and then this. So addition-wise, I should have said. Okay, I can switch the charger. So, I guess I just wanted to talk about him a little bit, and maybe link him in the comments, link him in the description. I don't know. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about getting laughed at or mocked. I'm kind of new to philosophy or whatever. I started listening to debate a few months ago, 3 months ago specifically. Can you stop? Specifically, so I guess I have this notebook here if I want to visually depict anything, but this is probably gonna take a while of just straight talking. So let's start with the one I made first. Okay. So basically, I made this in June. Whoops. And I made this in a 10-hour span. Not focused or anything, but 10 hours, and I wrote this. I don't have me making this on video, sadly, which is, I'm gonna be accused I didn't make it, so whatever. But basically, the view is that states of affairs are separated by temporal axis time, or set of axes time, and there's the seismograph analogy. I'm gonna link it all in the description if you want to read it. Whoops. I'm not cut out for this. But this is a syllogism against God. Just as an example of timeless beings, you could use the idea on of that change requires time because it requires two states, and states are separated by distinct temporal indexes, so it requires an axis time. But if you reject premise 1 by saying that God didn't create time, it follows that he didn't create the metaphysical parts sequence, axes, numbers, of course. I'm not sure he's going to say he created numbers either. Things like that. Time, indexes, axes. Because if you have one axis, you have multiple axes, you can just derive them. But, so basically, the way I formatted the syllogism was most of these are actually just derived from past premises. And they eventually led to the conclusion, step 16 is God is false. So you would need to reject either 11, assuming my inference rules and my deduction is all right in between, then you would need to look at 11, 4, 5, 1, and 2. And those would be the ones you have to reject. But of course, 2 is just time as a part of the set of everything other than God. So that's pretty basic. You don't want to reject that, and you don't want to reject that only something in time can change. That's easily motivated by the fact that change requires two states, and time under this view is just generated by the two states. It's not generated by two states, but if you have two states, you can just infer that there's time. It implies it, and then 5, in order to enter something, 1 must change. That just follows from the definition of what change is, right? It's a propositional binary switch, right? That's automatically a change. In order to enter something, 1 must change. So God is not in time to God is in time. That is a distinct switching of the binary. So that leads to a change, of course. And then 11, in order to be created, something must not exist in all state of affairs. That seems to follow just from the definition of creation. If something comes into existence, it can't exist in the span of all affairs, right? there must be, some amount of affairs where it does not exist. And I try to limit any transition words because it's easier to wiggle out of certain syllogisms of this type whenever you're talking about a timeless thing, and in relation to like time. Whenever you're trying to relate a timeless thing to time and states of affairs under this framework, it's a lot harder. And then this is all the definitions. I liked making the definitions. That was probably one of my favorite parts, other than like just like the perpendicular thing. I really loved making the definitions, and then the system generalization here, which is pretty short, but it's going off of it's going off of, originally it was purely based on the physical system, the universe, and that was actually longer than this one, but this one is a lot more to the point, straight. I'm not trying to do like a exhaustive look at every paper. And then we have secular morality. Again, thank you to allegedly Ian. This quote's actually also in this paper here. It's a footnote on the first page, so yeah, allegedly Ian, the YouTuber. Watch them, they're great. Great debater, philosopher, logician, top 3 collegiate national debater in parliamentary debate, Oh, pretty small feats there, but very fun to listen to them. A lot of help. I'm actually listening to them now as I do this, but it was a lot of fun learning this so far. This is actually directly from them, except I twisted it a little bit. So there's the is-ought gap, which says that it's really hard, or like the gap itself is saying that you can't derive an ought for like a subjective ought for like an agent from an is, a descriptive fact. Then, after that section, then we look at how theism attempts to bridge that gap, and there's 2 typical answers. One is that God is good, which is, of course, circular, because it's essentially saying if something is good, that is a normative word, which means that it would give reason for action. So whenever you're asking, what reason do I have to listen to what God says, and they say God is good, it's like saying, what reason do I have to listen to what God says? Because God gives reason by what he says. So that's just explicitly circular. That's work. I would have to agree to the conclusion to agree to that. And then, if you undergo punishment, this of course undergoes a normative breakdown, because what happens is you can say that the act itself isn't even a bad thing. If you repented, if you repented, or you don't get punished to begin with, it puts the thing on the action itself. You need to put it on the action itself, or it's not normative, right? So if you just say in the future you'll undergo punishment, that just takes all of the issue off of the action. It causes a normative breakdown, and if you can avoid the punishment, then the action was never itself bad nor good. Or you could say that your entire life was good because you avoided the punishment in general. It's not a very good response to the question. And then there's Alan Gaworth, right? The bridging the is-ought gap with the fundamental definition of an agent, right? These are the presuppositions for an actionative ought. We have a reason to take an action, and in order to take any action to go towards a specific ought or a goal, right, you would need to have freedom and well-being, which means that you presuppose that you have that, which means that off the basis that you even have goals and you take actions, that would therefore mean that everyone who does so automatically has that right, because it's the only morally relevant trait here. And we have these internal arguments there. Alright, you can read the paper, and then this isn't really even Aristotelian at this point, but I completely changed the virtue ethics angle because I thought that it wasn't very easy to specifically base, and I wanted to base it on, what am I doing? Figure it out. Anyways, What was I gonna say? Right. So I didn't like how the Aristotelian ethics aren't really like they presuppose themselves kind of to be objective, right? They don't really utilize anything up here, and I wanted them to do that, to work that in, so that I don't just like have two separate things, right? So I tied it in to freedom and well-being inherently. So we have the preservation of freedom and well-being to outside risk, internal risk to others, and maintaining the freedom of thought, the well-being of thought itself. So that would be like curiosity, yeah. And then I attempted to go into like non-agents, which would be like, yeah, like intensely mentally ill, and also the people in a coma. I don't know why I didn't separate these, but you know, I just wasn't feeling like it, I guess. So that was the second paper. God, this is a struggle. Heart pain. Chest pain. Okay. And then this, I talked about this a little bit, like offhandedly mentioned it. And in my last video to this one, Spit. And this is the paper, and it's basically me going over certain reworkings I've done whenever I've been working on calculus recently. I think this has been since June that I've been working on changing this. So I changed the grouping symbols, what they mean, to specifically so I don't overload one specific type of symbol, parenthesis, in my math. I didn't like how that did that, so I went ahead and like separated a bunch of different functions. And I tried to pull a little bit from programming with the curly brackets, so you can see that here. If we have like an object, we can pull specific values from the object using the curly brackets. I like that. I liked making that. I used it like a bunch whenever I was working on like the vector calculus, like divergence, curl, gradient, and also rotation. But those I worked a lot with the curly brackets to like pull out from like planes, which is why of course I used it as an example here. And then the angle brackets for like coordinate sets. Oh no, what am I doing? I need to change that. Whoops. Okay. I don't know why it didn't do that. Whatever. Okay. So those are supposed to be angle brackets. Failed miserably there. Need to do better. That's shameful. Shameful. And then I went into how I tried to like unify like the notation of discrete and continuous calculus. Well, like reducing how big it is, right? So I changed it to this, right, with the variable itself in the subscript. So we replace this variable within a function call with it plus v, right? And that is how you like generalize how you would say that one. And also it fits in one line, which I liked making it to do, because like fractional derivatives, stuff like that, are a lot harder to write in a single line. Same thing with my sum. And then the product, that was fun. Also, something cool is that if you do one step size, this format creates b minus 1 factorial, so gamma b. That's really interesting to me. Then the power rule, just me working through it. And then, yes, the exponential eigenfunctions. The eigenfunctions. Shut up. So pretentious. What a loser. Who wrote this? Anyways, I wrote that wrong. Oh, never mind, I didn't. I wrote it right, yeah. So this. I'm just seeing it in reverse for, this. And then non-constant step sizes. This was a really fun part. This part with the fx, and the like the self-functional derivative where you take like the derivative with respect to x with the step size of fx, and you do fx to find itself. You do something, it's called the Sylvester sequence, where it's x index n plus 1 equals x n squared plus x n, right? That is what that type of function generates. And I at first I saw it as like a triangle whenever I first did it, so I did that, so to represent like my geometric thoughts on it. And then we can derive a piecewise function, which you know between 0 and whatever it is blank and whatever. So if we start at 2, it goes like this, and we can define the piecewise function itself as 0 less than x less than or equal to a1 equals a1, and then a1 less than x less than or equal to a2 equals a2, blah 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 infinitely. And that ends up with this sequence of a 2 squared plus 2, 6 squared plus 6, 4 squared plus 2, 4 squared, 42 squared plus 42. What am I doing? And that was fun. Yeah, because it starts at 1, does 1 squared plus 1, so I can actually show that too. Go to Desmos and try and prove that that function works. So we have fx. Whoops, I'm too used to doing that now. Fx plus fx minus fx. Well, let's just do minus 1, because that just makes it easier to write. Shouldn't have done that because it takes longer now, because I didn't think of it at first. So if we define fx as whoops, it needs to be it was like, what was it? It's like 1,800. Never do that again. This is why people hate you. So if we look at that, we can see it perfectly lines up. And I thought that was so cool. That was so cool. I didn't derive that, but it was from a conversation. I was talking about it with an AI, and I got pointed in this direction, and it's really cool, right? Look at that. It's because it pulls from something later, and it ends up like pulling like the perfect amount. So because the domain is itself linked to the rise, why do I look at myself like? Yeah, the domain is explicitly linked to the rise, so you need to change how much the domain goes by based on the rise itself, how much the value changes by. But yeah, that was cool. It's a little bit different from what I usually post. But that was something. Bye. That was a fast outro.